everyone, welcome. I am Debbie Schwartz, founder of Road to College and the Paying for College 101 group, and I am here tonight with Jeff Rose. And we have a really good, I think it's a good topic, especially I got some really good questions from parents, so I think that people are intrigued. And it's just nice to have everybody here tonight. I would love, as we're waiting for people to still pop in, if people would say maybe just hello in the chat so that we know that you're there, where you're from, what age your students are from, because I think, or what age your students are. I think there's a little bit of a range tonight, which is great. And I'm just basing that on the questions that I got. And so we'd love to know who's out there. And just, I actually am normally in Philadelphia, but I'm actually
one of my groups.
Let's see. So I have a virtual background, but Jeff is outside of Nashville, and he'll give you a little bit about his background. But as I heard some people talking, let me tell you a little bit of the house rules. So we actually have this set up as a meeting. It is not a webinar. Personally, I do a lot of these events as meetings because I think it feels a little bit more intimate. It's nice to see people's faces when we can these days because we can't see people in person that much anymore. So you should be coming in muted, and we would prefer if you stay muted unless you really have a pressing question that you can't share, in the chat. This is recorded because that's like a #1 question I get, but hopefully by now people would know that we record everything. We will send you the link tomorrow. And then actually I had this question, which I want to let people know, because if you want to ask your student to come watch tonight, you definitely should. One woman asked me and said, is it okay if my son watches? I was like, absolutely. This is helpful information for you as parents, but it's, doubly helpful if you have your, child sitting next to you and you guys can talk about the things that we're going to talk about tonight. So I see lots of comments from people. Heather, you have a 13-year-old, 18-year-old, great. Mary has a junior and 8th grader. And I see people from all over: Portland, Connecticut, Pennsylvania, Texas, Florida. Good, so we have a really nice range of people tonight. So hopefully you guys know because you signed up, but tonight's topic is money management skills for young adults. I do a lot of sessions about college admissions, about paying for college. I actually really haven't done a session like this tonight, but I think it's going to be great. It's so important, not just to get your student through high school, get them to college, but you want to make sure that they also have important financial skills. And that transition from high school to college is the perfect time to make sure you as a parent are teaching them and that they have everything that they should have, because to some extent, college is the first time that they're really going to use, all these skills on their own. And so, and then you want to make sure that they can use them well before they go off truly on their own after college. So that's tonight's topic. Before we even delve in, which will be in 1 second, I want to give a thank you to our sponsor, which is College Ave Student Loans. They've made tonight's session possible. They are a student lender that offers private student loans. They help students and parents pay for college. We, Jeff and I, really enjoy working with them, particularly because they've taken a very strong interest in educating families on both the college admissions process and paying for college. And whether you're a student or a parent, College Ave is trying to help you find a private loan that really fits your budget and your goals. So thank you, College Ave. So Jeff, welcome. Nice to have you tonight.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and so I'll just give you a quick, tiny your background, but I know you're going to go into detail or a little bit more flowery background about what you were like in college.
Yeah, so go ahead.
So Jeff is a certified financial planner. He's a combat veteran, an author and founder of the website Good Financial Sense. He's also an author of the book Soldier of Finance, and he's combined his military background with his financial planning knowledge. And he also provides financial planning advice on other major sites like Forbes, CNBC, Wall Street Journal, Entrepreneur, Rutgers, Kiplinger's, and Fox Business. So we're really happy to have you tonight. Thanks for joining us, Jeff.
I'm excited to be here.
So I'm going to turn it over, but let me tell to Jeff, but let me tell everybody, please put your questions in chat. I did get questions beforehand, and I'm going to be monitoring the chat. If you have, I might interrupt Jeff as he's going through kind of explaining different topics, and we will at the end absolutely kind of go through more of people's Q&A. But Jeff, it's all over. It's up. Your turn.
All right, let's see if I can share my screen here to get to my slide deck. We got some options.
So I'm just, Pamela is saying, we're not going to give out, Pamela is asking if we're giving out a written version of the presentation. We're not giving out the presentation per se, but you will get a link to the recording if you want to watch it again. And I would suggest, it can't hurt to take notes, although you can, watch it if you missed something.
Well, this is funny. For me, I just installed the latest Apple update, and it's not allowing me to share my screen with Zoom unless I quit and reopen. So I think we got somebody on the back end, Dan, that can maybe do my slides.
Let me pull them up.
Or do you want me to kick off and come right back?
Let's see.
Let me pull them up for you. Give me 2 seconds.
Thank you. All right, as I'm looking through the comments, I'm seeing so many, those that have seniors. For those, right now, I've got a 13-year-old who he's starting high school next year for, and with that, we've got an 11, a 10, soon to be 10, and also a 6-year-old. So for those that have multiple children, I won't say I feel your pain, but I feel the struggles that you have. And, having a finance background, trying to teach my kids the importance of finances is even a challenge for myself. So don't think just because I'm a certified financial planner that I have it all figured out. I am learning just with you all as well.
So I see there's a question that Rich is asking about how do we handle the FAFSA application. To tell you the truth, tonight, we're not going to touch that much on things like FAFSA and financial aid. Rich, I will happily answer that question offline for you, but tonight we're going to talk more about money management skills and things like budgeting, building your students' credit, which was a big topic of with a lot of the questions. So this is less about the financial aid process and more about just good financial money management skills that students should have.
All right, deck's coming in 2 seconds. Just waiting for PowerPoint.
Thank you.
Yeah, you bet.
I'm sure we all can relate to the Zoom pains of all our kids starting school online and having to log into Zoom, open Zoom. Our 3 boys all started school remote at the beginning of the year, and each had their own Zoom logins and passwords, and it was a bit of a nightmare trying to get that figured out.
Yeah, I hadn't even, I do have high schoolers, so they can kind of manage that themselves, but I hadn't even thought about having younger kids and kind of helping them with all of just getting onto Zoom.
Oh, I'm glad that mine are back in school now, and I'm really grateful for that.
So Jeff, one quick question. Somebody is saying, I don't know, do you have any control over your sound? Somebody said you're a little bit muted compared to myself.
Let's see. I tried turning it up. How does it sound on your end?
It actually sounds okay to me. Anybody else out there? You want to tell us how Jeff's sound is?
It sounds fine.
Okay. Okay. So maybe the person. So it's a combination. Okay. So maybe just talk as loud as you can.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Dan. We'll go ahead and get it started here. Financial skills for college, for your soon-to-be college students. Debbie already gave me a nice little introduction on just a little bit about my background. I was a finance major. Even before that, though, I actually dropped out of college not once, but twice. First after high school, and then getting my MBA, which I actually never got. So that was my college journey. And Danny, go ahead and go to the next slide. Or can I click it or no? No, it's you? Okay. Oh, so there is a little bit about, I mentioned the 4 kids. My oldest there, he's got, all my kids are going through these hair stages right now. My oldest has had long hair, short hair. He's like in between. My youngest son is like trying to catch up. In addition to our 4 kids, we also have 2 puppies that are just joined our family in July. So if you think that we do not like, or if we don't like chaos, that is not true. We have just always have a lot of action going on. I saw somebody in the chat is from Los Angeles. So I actually was born in LA. And because of that, I am a In-N-Out Burger advocate, addict, however you want to look at it. Fortunately, I live in the Nashville, Tennessee area now. So we are getting Shake Shack, which isn't In-N-Out. It's a close substitute. Many of you may disagree and say it's better, but we'll save that for another conversation. But next slide. Before I was a financial planner. Oh, sorry. Let me, oh, you don't have new slides. That's right. I forgot. I updated my slide deck. So before we thank College Ave Student Loans for sponsoring, what I wanted to share with you all is that you just saw a little bit where I am at today. Certified financial planner, contributor, author, all these cool things. But before all that happened, I mentioned I dropped out of college. In addition to that, I took out student loans. I maxed out student loans for 3 years. This is after joining the military when they were paying for majority of my school. I took out credit cards. I also co-signed for a credit card for my now ex-girlfriend, which had a $10,000 limit. So in all, I think I was up over $40,000 of debt before I even graduated. And I wanted to share that with you because if you have some fear that your child is going down this path of financial ruin, they can get themselves out of it. I am a prime example, so I do want to give you some hope. Hopefully, by some of the information I'm sharing here today, we can prevent some of that. So that was the slide that I added, but that's a little bit more about my background, the true vulnerable background. But once again, I want to thank College Ave for sponsoring this event, making this happen. We also, I think we'll have a link in the description here or the comments.
Yep, we just put a link in there.
So they have a nice little promotion going right now where you can win college textbooks for a year. So click on that link, be sure to register. All right, let's get on to the content here. So the one thing that I've seen, not just being a financial planner, but just with the blog, with the YouTube channel, and just the social media, and just seeing, all the different stats you see, and all the different people that are struggling with finances. Right now, less than 50% of Americans have or can cover a $400 emergency. And I mean, there's also studies out there that shows that, the average American doesn't even have a savings account, doesn't have at least $1,000 in their savings account. Less than 60% are saving for retirement, much to do with the YOLO syndrome, just taking advantage of living in the present, which I totally agree with, but you also have to think about the future as well. And there was also a study that showed that only 34% can answer 4 of 5 basic financial literacy questions. And I actually took this test. I was curious, and I'm proud to share I did score 100%. I'd be almost ashamed if I didn't. But these questions were not difficult questions. It was talking about basic home buying questions, basic interest questions, things that you would want somebody to know if they were buying a home, buying a car, opening any sort of credit card or any sort of loan. So it's a scary stat that only 34% can answer 4 out of 5. So right now, this is the state of where we're at. And now it's just wondering, you're all here, how can we help? We want to help our kids. We want to give them the best. We want to give them, a better life than we had, but where do we start? So next slide, it all starts with having the talk. And this is not the talk that we probably should have already had years ago. No, the talk that we're talking about here is having a real life money talk. Next slide. So often I would meet with parents, with soon to be college kids as well. And we start talking about college and the cost of college. And most often they didn't have any idea how much college costs, like how much the college was going to cost that they wanted to go to. They didn't have this discussion of, who's going to be paying for it, how's it going to be covered, and really this question of, many of us have this idea, like, or students especially have this idea, like, I'll just get a loan and I'll just start paying it off, but they don't run the numbers to see how long is that going to take. If they take out so many student loans, many don't know that it's going to take them years upon years, maybe even a decade or longer to pay off some of these student loans. So it's important to have this talk, have this discussion. And Student Nav also has a really good article that talks about the cost of college that also gives you some good key discussion points to have your kids. I think we'll have a link as well. There will be some links to some of these slides in the comments for you guys to check out. So a common question, that we get, and I think this is a question that was pre-submitted, was, what is a good rule of thumb on how much student loan debt, or how much in student loans should one take out? And a good rule of thumb, click on that one, is do not borrow more than your starting annual salary. Now, I assume this is probably difficult because you might have a student that doesn't know what they want to do. So they don't know exactly how much they're going to make. But, general rule of thumb, if you start looking at some professions in that space, or just maybe the major that they're considering, you're just looking at starting entry jobs to see what is that base salary. And that will give you a good sense of how much of a student loan, like, you don't want to go over that. And the premise here is that if you go over this, I believe you run the calculation, it will take you more than 10 years to pay it off. So by not going over that starting annual salary, you'll be able to pay it off sooner, and you won't be cash strapped as you're also trying to start your family.
But you know what, Jeff, I'm just going to add in, because it sounds like a little onerous for people, but and sometimes people think, well, I'll do that once my kid gets into college, and we'll help them figure out, what their graduating salary might be. But you can actually do these, they're estimates, but estimates are better than nothing. You can do these estimates part of the college planning process in 11th and 12th grade, and make projections about what they might be interested in, just even get a sense. And it's eye-opening to see what starting salaries are. Then maybe you pick a city where they might want to live, and you kind of do estimates about what the apartment might cost there. And even it's just an education so that they see what all the daily costs are related to living on their own, which they may not realize.
Yeah, and when you think about, for those that can potentially take out student loans for all 4 years, and maybe even longer if they go for a higher degree, that amount of money, that amount of debt could be more than their home, or the home that you're currently living in. And I'm pretty sure that you wouldn't go sign a mortgage, for 300, 400, 500,000, depending on where you live, without knowing all the ins and outs of it, and sitting down and running the numbers and making sure that you can afford this. And no different in going to college, running those numbers to know how much is it going to cost, and realistically, can we even afford this? My kid wants to go to a private university, and this is how much it costs. Like, we can't afford that. You can't afford that. Like, I mean, that's great. I'm glad that you have some ambition, but the truth is, like, that is not an option for you right now.
And sorry, I'm just going to add one more thing, because somebody actually sent me a message. They asked, when the number that you gave, not taking out loans, that would be more than your first year's salary. They asked if that was even includes graduate school, and it doesn't. So you have to think about what your child might want to do. And a lot of people do, and a lot of students, smartly think, if I want to go into a graduate school, then I have to be even more careful about how much debt I might take on from an undergraduate perspective.
Mm-hmm. So it comes down to really just setting those clear expectations. Next slide, Dan. So the question is, one of those, if you ever gone to dinner, with some friends, and it's time for the check, and like, who's picking up the bill? Who's going to pay that tab? So it really comes down to answering these questions and knowing, go ahead and hit the next there button. Who is going to pay for the student loan? When you don't have these discussions, sometimes the expectation is that mom and dad are going to pick up the tab. Well, if mom and dad don't pick up the tab, go ahead and click it one more time there. What happens if mom and dad can't make the payment? What happens if the child says, oh, I'll make the payment, but they can't get a job and they have to make some sort of payment, or they just can't afford it for whatever reason? Then who's going to pick up the tab after that? And these are hard but necessary discussions and conversations that we need to have with our kids. And these are conversations that we're starting to have with our kids now. I mean, we're at least planting the seed so they know, hey, listen, like, actually kind of a funny joke that we tell our kids is like, oh, do mom and dad have a lot of money? Or like, do we have a lot of money? It's like, no, mom and dad have a lot of money. You don't, you're broke. So like they have to earn, whatever it is that they want to buy and purchase. And it's starting this, giving our kids that responsibility of knowing of like, oh, well, you want to go to this school, how much does it cost? And chances are many of them may not know, but now you've forced them to start doing some research to find out how much is tuition, how much is room and board, how much is housing, and everything else that goes along with it. So now we're talking these are some of the crucial money skills that I think are just so imperative right now. And these are money skills that apply to our kids. These are money skills that we can apply to ourselves as well. So one of the things I think is so important, and the reason I chose the term cash flow management is because typically when you use the word budget, I know even me as an adult, like I don't like that word. I don't even know if my kids know what a budget is, if I were to ask them. But oftentimes when we think of budgeting, we think it as being very tedious, very labor intensive. Next slide. But the truth is that budgeting is not lame, and budgeting can be very simple. Budgeting is something that I definitely fought for the longest time, but go ahead and click the next button there. But creating a monthly budget, I mean, it just helps know how much you've got coming in, helps you track your spending, helps you understand like where money is coming from, where it's going. And I think we'll get to that here in a second, but I know like one of the common questions is with kids nowadays, I mean, especially even with adults now, like, I know for me, I grew up in a very cash society where everything we pay with cash or check, and now with, the PayPals and the Venmos and the Cash Apps and everything else, it's just all digital. And it makes it almost feel like it's not real. The fact that I can go on Amazon right now and click the buy button, and all of a sudden I've got whatever I need delivered to my door, in 24, 48 hours. That just seems very surreal, but like that's the world that we are living in right now, and even cries out more why having a good sense of budgeting or cash flow. I just like the word cash flow because, as a business, to stay successful, to stay open, you have to have cash flow. You got to have money to pay the bills and pay all your necessary expenses, but you also got to know where it's coming from. Go and click on the next slide. And then one more time. And the one thing that I know that I've learned personally, because when I talk about me being somebody that has fought budgeting, I mean, I've fought it as hard, as long as I could. But what I have found and what I've seen, not only personally, but I've seen with clients, just other people that actually spent some time, invested some time on tracking their spending and not doing like a formal budget. It doesn't have to be like this full blown out Excel spreadsheet with 47 cells and all these different formulas. It could be a simple notepad. It could be all like, we'll talk about some apps here in a second. But what people often discover is that when you're tracking your spending, you're identifying all these different areas where your money is going that you really don't care about. That if you actually sat down like, man, I don't want to spend $20 a month on this. Why did I spend $100 there? I would much have rather spent my money there. So budgeting is not lame. It gives you the freedom to spend your money on what matters the most to you. And I know that there are tons of apps out there. I mean, the most popular two that I continue to hear about. So I have, not only have I been a financial planner for 16 plus years, but, being in the financial blogger space and, being connected with all these bloggers that are talking about all the different and latest apps, the two that are still being talked about, for the last 10 plus years are Mint and YNAB. And YNAB stands for You Need a Budget. Mint is free. If you do sign up, you do get some ads to get just all their different partners. Mint is the one that my wife and I use. And once again, I fought it for the longest time and I finally just signed up. And to add like all my bank accounts, all of my investment accounts all into one place, it was super simple. And then I go in once a month, just reconciling, some transactions that they aren't able to categorize because they don't know exactly what it is. And then with that, you get all these pretty pie charts and graphs, and you can see, I know one thing that we discovered, maybe many of you might be able to relate to this, but in the first part of the pandemic, we got really tired of having to feed our kids multiple times per day.
Mm.
We were really ambitious when it first started. And then it's just like, oh my gosh, like, I don't want, then my wife and I were taking turns and we were just like, no, I don't want to do it anymore. And then, you got Grubhub and DoorDash and Uber Eats. And all of a sudden it was like, not every other night, but I feel like it was 3 times, maybe 4 times a week that we had some sort of food being delivered at our house. And using Mint, I was able to calculate and see, and I'm not going to share the amount here because I got some shame in this, but when I saw like how much we spent just on DoorDash and Grubhub and all the delivery apps alone, I mean, we were shocked and we're like, no, we're not going to do this anymore. And plus our kids were getting to the point where like, oh, let's just get DoorDash. Let's just get DoorDash. Like, no, like this is not real life. Real life is not spending, $35 for like 2 cheeseburgers, coming to your door every day. But Mint is one of the easiest things that you can use. It's easy, especially for kids nowadays that can download an app and faster than I can. I mean, my 13-year-old is teaching me how to use my phone, I feel like nowadays. But these are 2. YNAB, I think they do have a payment. I'm not sure exactly how much it is, but they do have, you can test it out for 34 days, which is kind of interesting because I want you to see what is it like to use it for a full month. But the cool thing about YNAB, I will say, those that use it love it. They absolutely love it. I don't know why they love it as much, but I do know that they are very strong advocates of YNAB or You Need a Budget.
So Jeff, somebody just commented, Jim said, teach our kids to cook. They'll save money for college. So that's very true. And like, I don't love it, but it's an illustrative story to talk about, how much you realize you were spending, ordering out. And probably if you compare that to what it would have cost if you had just bought food and cooked it, you would have seen a big difference. But what happens again, when kids go to college, it's the first time they have the freedom to decide where they're going to eat, what they're going to eat. A lot of times the freshman year, you have to have a meal plan. But if they're eating out in addition to the meal plan, or if they don't have a meal plan, they don't realize how much those meals start adding up.
And there's a lot of truth in that comment of teaching your kids how to cook, because if they don't know how and they go to college, then I mean, I know that my, not proud to admit this, but like my 13-year-old has had my 11-year-old show him how to use like our air fryer, just because my 11-year-old, he figures it out. He just kind of does it. And my 13-year-old he's getting there. He knows how to do it now. But I mean, these are life skills, not just, financial skills, but life skills. And I never even really thought about that, but I definitely see how that has and will be a big help for them later on. So the other financial skill, and curbing your spending, watching where your money is going. I mean, this is one, when I talked about how much debt that I had, all the credit cards that I was taking out. What I didn't mention was, I was in the Army National Guard. It was paying for, I think, all of my tuition and like 80 or 90% of my books. So I didn't have to pay for a lot. In addition to that, I was also working 20 plus hours a week. My rent was like $180 a month. I mean, small town. This is back in Southern Illinois, several years ago. But I had so much extra money, but yet I was spending money on clothes, eating out, going to the bars and just, being a college student. And sadly, like this was all stuff. I didn't take any cool trips. I mean, I went on spring break a few times, but like I didn't like go to any tropical places, didn't go to Europe. I mean, well, if I would have went to Europe, I would be probably $15,000 more in debt. But I was just wasting my money on just stuff. Next slide. And so what was kind of really eye-opening for me, it will get to the next slide, I'll tell more about the story. But, there's an author, David Bach, he talks about the latte factor, where basically it's not just about buying the latte. It's about what are the little things that we spend our money on every single day that adds up. But it's the bigger purchases. One of the things that I'm very passionate about is not driving a brand new car, because it's very appealing. The $5 lattes are easier to kind of let it slip through the cracks, just kind of like DoorDash and Grubhub, but the bigger car purchases, I know so often I would meet with clients. I can think of so many examples of a client coming in with their high school age, teenage child and telling me that they need to pull money out of their accounts because they need to buy their child a reliable transportation, which in their mind was buying a brand new car. And when it wasn't until like I was in college that I had a finance professor that just told me a really compelling story about, because my vision was when I graduated, even though I had no idea what I was going to be doing at the time, was to have some finance job, riding the corporate ladder. I wanted a BMW. I have no idea why. No one in my family had a BMW, but I knew that was the car that I was going to buy. And then after a finance professor gave me a very compelling story about how that was not the smartest financial decision, I changed my complete mindset. And I think it is the next slide. So what happened was when I graduated college, actually I was technically still in college. So my grandmother passed away and she had a 1998 Chevy Lumina. It was paid for. I think it was like 8,000 miles or 12,000 miles on it. And that is not the actual car you see on the slide, but that's what it looked like. Same color. Mine did have alloy wheels, but it had a tape deck, 4 doors, all the safety features. And what ended up happening was when I graduated, that was the car that I drove. So I would drive up to client meetings. I would drive up to the office, and keep in mind, like I'm in a brokerage firm. Everyone's driving nicer cars. I've got the Lou, what I called her. And what I ended up discovering, so this is a blog post. I think there's a link that you can check out if you want. The title of the blog post is How My Grandmother's 1998 Chevy Lumina Made Me Over $2 million. And what happened is that when I graduated, my starting salary out of college was $18,500. I was able to make some fees and commissions, but overall, I think I made gross. It was like $23,000. Most people that are making that amount of money cannot invest because that's just not enough. Because after that, you got taxes and you got to pay for medical insurance and all that fun stuff. But even though I was making what I was making, because I didn't have the car payment, because I wasn't budgeting per se, but I was really watching where I was spending my money, I was able to start investing right out of college. And I was investing in my 401k. I was also investing into my Roth IRA. And because of that, I was able to max out my Roth IRA for several years. And then based on that calculation, you click on the next slide, for those that are compounding interest fanatics like myself, just showing that if instead of having that new car payment, like the BMW, instead I drove the Lou, I was able to invest that $400 a month. If I average 10% interest over 41 years until like I'm ready to retire, it would be just over $2.6 million, $2.8 million. But the truth is that it actually has made me more than that, because that is also a gift you can get your kids. And I don't go too off on tangent on investing, but just to get them to start investing into something, doesn't really matter what, into something. And right now you've got so many different investment apps. I know a lot of kids have Robinhood. I have a Robinhood account, but that is just one way, just by learning with small amounts of money. It doesn't require $400 a month to get started, just a small amount. But that is one reason why I'm so passionate about watching where you're spending your money on. And because of that, a little rule that I try to show people, where it makes it more sense in the real term is, next slide, what I call the 20X rule of spending. Go ahead and click on the next button. So the idea is that anything that your child wants to buy today, whether it be the new iPhone, or they want to go on this trip, or it's clothes, or whatever it is, like whatever it is that they want, ask them to take whatever it is today, multiply it by 20, and essentially that's how much they are giving up. Like that's how much they are robbing from their future self. So investing $1,000 today, that is taking away from, so this is a picture of Turks and Caicos, which I've never been. This is like a dream vacation that my wife and I have on our bucket list, to-do list. But essentially there are so many of these little and even bigger purchases like an iPhone that will rob them from a bigger house, be able to retire early, be able to take vacations with their kids. So many different things. And so it's like, okay, there's something that you want, you really want it, multiply it by 20. And that's how much potentially that you are robbing yourself from having later on.
Jeff, this is just a quick little question. Somebody was just curious, when you're of 20, like what's the time span?
I think that I did that over, oh gosh, I want to say 30 years, I believe. I think the idea was, actually click on the next slide. Oh, never mind, go back. I forgot I added another slide too. So there's basically, if you look at, there's a calculation that shows like if you are investing $5 a day, making 10% return, and you do so over, I think it's 40 years. So you think if somebody is 18 or 20 years old, starts investing $5 a day, by the time that they are 40, they will have $1 million saved up.
Yep.
Now we could talk about the 10%. We could talk, like, whoa, the mortgage gonna make that much? I always tell people like, hey, if they don't make 10%, if they make 7%, they make 6%.
Right.
They're still going to have a big chunk of money. But the key is just starting early.
And what I actually always try and explain to my kids too, it's not that if you've missed 1 year, let's say you couldn't start this year, it's not that you missed this year, you actually missed all the future years of compounding on that money. So that's also the importance of trying to start as early as possible, because if you can start now and then you have 20, 30 years of compounding for that, this year, you can start it next year, but you've lost like 30 years from not starting as early as possible. Yeah.
And that is one of the hardest concepts for people to accept. And what was really helpful for me, like why did it make sense for me, was when my first year as a financial planner, I met with a couple in their 60s wanting to retire. And when I looked at all their financial statements, like it wasn't even an option, like it wasn't even on the radar for several years. And they were both in jobs that they hated. It was hard, like a hard job. And I felt like I was the bad guy because I couldn't tell them that they couldn't retire early. And I just remember like how just dejected they were, just like they just walked out of my office and just felt like I just told them, their dog just got ran over. And I just remember that look. And I just remember thinking to myself, I don't want to be those people. Like, I don't want to be like that. And I didn't share this, but like both my parents struggled with finances. So it was kind of like this perfect storm of seeing my parents and seeing how much they've struggled. And that's when I really got gung-ho crazy about saving, investing, and also trying to help others, not make the same mistake. All right. So the other thing, another very crucial money skill, I know, I think a lot of the questions that we got centered around this topic, and it's really just building solid credit, building a solid credit foundation. And let me just go ahead and put this out of the way. I mean, I'm not a huge fan of just the credit scoring and how it works. But just because this is just the nature of how it works and what it is, it's just more or less, I guess, part of the system that we have to abide to a certain extent. You know, so I don't get super obsessed about the credit score. Like I don't need to have a perfect score, but I do keep track of it. I do make sure that I'm doing the right thing so that I do have healthy credit, and something that you can do for your kids as well. Next slide. So oftentimes there's like some confusion on credit report versus a credit score. And the quick definition, you know, between the two is that your credit report is kind of like what it sounds. It's a report on all of your past history. So it's like your credit rap sheet, you know, all the things that you have done, all the credit cards you've opened, all the credit cards you have closed, all the loans that you've taken out, all the payments that you have made or have not made. It has everything that is tied to you is on your credit report. And your credit score is just a three-number calculation, three-digit number that is based off of that history. The highest you can get is, I think, 850 for a FICO score, but that is what your score is. Next slide. For many, and you can sign up for Mint is another example. If you sign up for Mint, they'll offer you your free credit report, and that is something that you can take. There's 3 credit agencies. You got Experian, TransUnion, and Equifax. But you can go to annualcreditreport.com, go there, request your free credit report. And before it was only once a year, but I think now just because of COVID and everything else, like they allow you to access it more. Not that you need to do that. Usually it's like once a year is usually good. Every 6 months could also be just another thing. If you want to do it, sometimes what you discover is that if there's like an identity theft, like that's where you can discover this, but you can request your report and it will, once again, it will show you everything. And I know, I think the last time that we ran my credit report, like there were a few credit cards that I had forgot about that were still open. We weren't using it, but they were still out there. And it was just like, oh, we should probably close those. We don't need those anymore. As far as the credit score itself, when you look at the actual credit score, we break it down to 5 major categories. The one that I really want to focus on for the first part here is your payment history. And the reason is because payment history is one of 2 things. Having a history of showing, are you making your payments on time? Well, in addition to that, the other side of that is what happens if you miss a payment? And I want to bring this up because I could see I'm sure even many adults, but also especially teenagers saying, oh, it's just a payment. What's the big deal? Like, what does that really mean? Well, this is what it could mean. Next slide. So it's only one payment. I think I pulled this from credit.com and then click on the next slide. I blow this up. So the middle paragraph there says one recent late payment can cause as much as 180-point drop on a FICO score. 180-point drop. Now, in that situation, it's somebody that was like 90 days past due, just hadn't made that payment. But either way, like that is how detrimental missing one payment on a credit card, one payment for rent, one payment on if you have a car payment, just anything for that matter. Like it is a big deal. Now, can you get that taken care of? Most likely, yes. I mean, you could work with them, but it's still something that you have to deal with. And for those that don't deal with it, it can have a long-lasting effect that could take you years to get out of. So before I actually talk about this slide, just my own personal example, when I believe I was in my early 20s, I think it was the very first time that I requested my credit report. And it was one of those, oh, maybe I should do that. And I did. And then I don't remember my score exactly, but it was in the either high 500s or low 600s, which is not good. And the reason why was because I found out that I had a gym membership that I was marked as delinquent on. And this is when I was living in California, the gym was, but at that point in time, I had moved, was now living in the Midwest. So I had not lived in that state for at least a year or two. But it was showing on my credit as a missed payment as delinquent. So I was able to contact the credit agency and contact the gym, got it squashed. And by getting that off my credit report, my score then went up at least 100 points or so. So that is when you have like a missed payment or being delinquent on some sort of payment. The other factor here, so we looked at that first slide where it was 35% was our payment history. Well, in this case here, this was actually, I think it was the year before my book came out, Soldier of Finance. And I had an intern that was working with me and he was helped me do some research on the book. And he was helping me do some research on credit scores and credit reports. So he's like, I should get my credit report and find out what my score is. And kudos to his parents, because his parents were very much anti-credit cards. Like they didn't have credit cards. So with him, he didn't have credit cards. So when he went to get his credit score, his score was like, once again, like mine was in the low or high 500s, low 600s. And not in his case, he didn't have any missed payments, but for him, he didn't have any credit history at all. Didn't have any credit cards, didn't have a car payment. So to the credit bureaus, he was nobody. And because of that, he was potentially high risk because there was no history. He didn't have a proven track record of being able to borrow and then make that payment on a timely basis. So what he ended up doing, and we'll talk more about here on this one here, was he opened a secured credit card. And for those that aren't familiar with a secure credit card, it's basically kind of like a debit card in the sense that you can't spend more than what you put on it. But I think in his case, like he opened up a secure credit card, he deposited $500, and then he would charge it, which is his own money, and then pay it off, charge it and pay it off. And then within 9 months of just using that secured credit card, his credit score went up over 110 points, very short amount of time. At that point, he had graduated and he had contacted me. He's like, hey, guess what? I think he was either buying a car or a house and he had to run his credit again. He's like, my credit score went up 110 points just because I started using this credit score. But that is one of the easiest ways that you can help your teenager help build that credit, help build that solid credit foundation. We're also teaching them how to borrow and then pay it back. They also can't go over, I guess they can. I don't know. You'll have to check all the fine print of these secure credit cards. And I know there's always a lot of questions about like which one is the best one. There are so many different types. And I will tell you that my oldest just came to me yesterday and he's like, hey dad, his friend has one. I don't even know the name. It was like Greenlight or something that his parents are using. And I'm not familiar with it yet. I actually just started doing some research, but there are that is an option. I think Chime has one where they have a credit builder program, which basically is they have a really fancy name, but it's basically just a secure credit card that they have. I know that NerdWallet has, which I love the name, by the way, nerdwallet.com, but they also have a list of all the different secured credit cards, especially even for teenagers that you can check out. And you can see if there are any annual fees and how it all works and, check the fine print to see if those are the ones that work for you. But that is the way, I know, at least for me, that is the way that we're going to help our kids build their credit by using a secured credit card, something to that effect. The other options are being an authorized user or co-signing. Authorized user basically is where their name is on the card. You are liable for them, anything that they spend on it, but they don't have any responsibility for having to pay that off. It all basically is on your credit. It does help build their credit. Everything I read about it, it doesn't help as much as if they had their own card, like if it was their own credit card, but it does help. I know personally, if I was choosing the two, I would choose the secure credit card. If I was going the authorized route, I would open up another card just because I wouldn't want my kid to have access to like one of our credit cards that has a very high limit. Kids are young, but you never know because that is the reality of what could happen. Co-signing, with your kid is something that you can do. Once again, you are fully liable, but they're also now liable for you as well. So if you co-sign for your child, and then all of a sudden now something happens to your financial situation where you lose your job, you can't pay your bills, you miss a payment. Now it kind of works the other way where you could potentially hurt their credit. So that is one reason why I'm not personally a big fan of the co-signing option. I know some parents do that, but as far as like my preference, I'm going in that order: secured credit card, authorized user, and then co-signing.
Jeff, we had a question about um, the credit report before we maybe move off of this topic. And somebody asked that they had read that you should not close your credit cards because it will deflate your credit score.
Yeah, so great question. And this is what I love. No, this is actually, I'm being very satirical here. There is so many, closing a credit card could ding your credit score. If we went, actually, Dan, if you can go back to that slide that shows like the 5 credit factors. Yeah, okay. So, bing, right there. So if you look at the top, we talked about payment history, which is basically, are you making the payments on time or did you miss a payment? That represents 35% of your score. The other part is credit utilization, which I think is like, why do they use that word? I don't know. But essentially what that means is if you have a 10,000, let's just say you have one credit card and you've got a $10,000 limit. If you have fully maxed that card out and you've charged $10,000, that means you are 100% utilization ratio on that card. And that means that you are probably borrowing more than you should, and that's going to affect your credit score. Typically, I think a general rule of thumb is somewhere in that 20 to 30% utilization is where the credit reporting bureaus want you at. So that means if you have a $10,000 limit, they only want you charging $2,000 to $3,000, which almost seems like, then why do you give me a limit? Like, why do you give me $10,000? But that's just kind of how it works. So kind of to that point of you don't want to close out old cards. Well, like in my personal example, we have 4 cards that we're using right now that we rotate through, and we're points people. We pay them off. So these are cards that we are below the utilization ratio, far below that. So for us, closing those cards wouldn't help. But let's say you are that person that has one card, it's fully maxed out, it's $10,000, and you have 2 other cards that don't have anything on them, and they're say 10,000 as well total. So that means you've got access to $20,000 of credit, and now you're, instead of being 100% utilization ratio, you're at 50%. So now you're not as risk. So in that example, you wouldn't want to close those cards because it's helping your credit score. I hope that helps.
Yeah, it's not as straightforward as as the person had gotten the original answer.
And that's unfortunately, like when you read anything online about credit, they do a lot of good information, but it's really the same thing about, trying to get medical advice, for your health condition. There's so many different factors at play here that it's hard to just give one blanket answer. Some people, yes, you shouldn't close those credit cards. Other people, not a big deal. All right. So I know like one of the things that was kind of talked about is like, as far as like the financial checklist, the final, like the money must do's on some of the things that we want to give our kids, if we can really just give them the prep that they need. I'm hoping that it has the updated slides. We're going to find out. Should be one more. Okay. So tweak this a little bit in the new slide, but I really think about when I am looking at my money situation and how much I'm making, how much I'm saving, how much I'm spending. Essentially, what we are is we are our own CFO, which is a chief financial officer. This is the person in that company that is in charge of all things going on money, in that business. Same thing applies to your financial life. Like you want your kids to be their own CFO, be in control of their money, to know what they have, where it's going, and what it's going towards. And one of the key things that you can try to help them do is have a savings habit. And this is a struggle. Like, I know it's a struggle. My oldest son right now, he is into sports cards. I'm kind of blamed for that a little bit, but so now, he is on eBay, and I'll give him credit. He's washing cars and he's earning some money, but like I'm having to remind him that, hey, there might be something that you want one day. So it's a good idea to put some of that money aside, and we are doing the envelope system, which is kind of old school. It's going to work for maybe another year. So we have like, our make or our spend, save and give envelopes that, they put them into. I know eventually like those are going to go away. He's already, he's got his phone. He wants Venmo and he wants this green light or green wise thing. But that is a way that we're showing him, hey, like this is why we save. We save because there's going to be something that you want one day. The thing that I don't have on here, which I think is also important, is showing or encouraging or challenging your child to earn independent income. And what I define independent income is that the ability where they can earn, where I mean, we can look at as when we were kids, as far as like, it could be babysitting, mowing lawns, basically it's taking some initiative to go do something and get paid, but then also teaching them, what are unique ways that they can make money. And then eventually that grows to, where they can start earning, where they're not trading their time for money. That is a common question that I get that a lot, but the first thing that you have to do is earn independent income, where basically they're like an independent contractor, they're their own business, their own entrepreneur. My 11-year-old, he saw his older brother washing cars. So then he wanted to wash fences, which was a horrible idea. When I'm like, that's going to take you like an entire weekend. So instead I said, hey, why don't you go clean out trash cans? And because we have like the big trash cans, I know ours like just in the summertime smell horrific. And many people in the neighborhood I've heard people talk, man, mine smell too. It's like, hey, when it gets warm, why don't you ask people if they'll allow you to clean their trash cans out for like $5 a trash can? So him and his buddy, like I think they've cleaned like 8 trash cans this week. I mean, God bless him. Like, what a filthy, disgusting job. But he's learning how to make money, and there's also some amazing life skills in there, having to go knock on doors and to sell the person on, their service and what they do, follow up and everything else. But he's learning how to earn income, independent income, managing your debt, and then investing for now and later. I could have done an entire presentation on investing. It is something that all of this I'm passionate about, the investing side, probably even more so just because I've seen the fruits of my labor of investing as early as I did. And I didn't even start that early. All things considering, I remember when I was in high school, actually a senior, a friend of mine was telling me about the Roth IRA, and he was all big on it. And I'm like, dude, you're weird. Like, why are you talking about this? I don't even know what that even means. And now looking back, like, I don't know how he knew about it. I don't know if it was his parents told him about it. Either way, I'm sure that he is very well off because he started investing when he was like 17 or 18. And the sooner that you can teach your kids how, and not even the common pushback I get is like, well, I don't know where to go. I don't know where to start. They don't have a lot of money. Well, that's where I'll push back and say, there are so many different apps. Just like we talk about Mint and YNAB, there are so many different investment apps: Robinhood, Acorns, M1 Finance, Webull. I could probably name like 7 more. That, and many of them you can start investing for $5, and that might not make a huge financial difference later on in life, but it's just that life skill of like, oh, I bought something in the stock market. Now I got these numbers. Like, what does that mean? They're getting notifications on their phone about what's going on in the market. And there's just this learning process through osmosis, that's how I like to learn. That's how I encourage many people to learn. It's how I encourage my kids to learn. Also, I guess how I encourage you to help your kids learn as well. So that is, I believe, the end of my slide deck. And now I am here ready for more questions.
Yeah, no, this was great. Thank you, Jeff. And I actually love the idea. I have to tell you, it's kind of interesting. I hadn't really thought about it of using the analogy of a business, like running a business, like you are your own business. And I think that's a great way of thinking about it. Like you gotta, obviously have revenue, you gotta have earnings, you gotta have income, and you gotta be able to cover your own expenses, or else you're gonna go in the red. So that's kind of like the most. I think that might be like an easy analogy, maybe, for parents to use with students. But let's see what questions we have. Do you mind, Maria's just asking if you can repeat some of the apps that you talked about at the end, for investing?
Yeah. Robinhood, they've done an amazing job marketing to millennials, but also they have really gamified the investing, which some people don't like almost because and there's been some negative press regarding that. So you can kind of do your own research. Full disclosure, I do have a Robinhood account and it is super easy to use. And I do like that ease. In addition to that, I have M1 Finance is another investment app. And my investing folder for Betterment, Acorns, I believe, and is there another one? Acorns, I think, is the one they want. Their marketing thing is like helping you invest your spare change. So like just taking, I think, if you run transactions through there. So let's say that you buy something for $3.71. Well, you can then round up like the 19 cents and it goes into your Acorns account in a way. So it's kind of like taking a little bit of money, which I do like. Webull is also a one that I have as well. It's a newer one, but it's been around for several years. And then you have like TD Ameritrade, which has been around for a while. Fidelity has an online option as well. Vanguard usually has like a higher minimum. So that's where like a Robinhood, M1 Finance, Acorns, Betterment. Betterment is you choose the financial goal. So is it saving for like 3 years? Is it buying a house? Is it retirement? And then they will then build the investment portfolio for you. So it's very much more goal driven for those that don't want to pick individual stocks or ETFs or mutual funds, because that can be daunting for many people.
Okay. Yeah, it sounds like that's a topic unto itself, that like a separate presentation. So
I should drop a link. We do have a blog post on the site that has a rundown of all the different investment apps that we try to update on a recurring basis, because it does change a lot.
So you did mention, helping your student get a credit card, and that, is one of the ways that you talked about helping to build their credit. Do you have any thoughts on what age that should happen at? Like, do you think they're too young to have the credit card, when they're a teen, or college is better? Any thoughts on, the age of doing that with them?
Yeah. I will say, in my mind, like I thought I would not have that discussion with my oldest kid until like later on in high school. But the fact that he asked me and he's interested, it's like, okay, maybe this is something I should take advantage of. Because I will say, well, I mean, it's always your oldest, your first, like you're probably stressed out about the most. So, I mean, he's 13, he'll be 14 this summer. That's something that I'm looking at to doing like this year with him. So I guess too soon would probably be if they're not 10 yet. But I think in his case as well, he's got to that point now where he wants to buy stuff. Like he wanted to go to a card show last weekend. He's like, "Hey, Dad, can I borrow $40?" I'm like, "No, no, you can't. You don't got the money, then you can't go buy stuff." So that is going to, hopefully motivate him to either not go or, figure out a way, like you go wash some more cars, or go knock on doors and talk to people. But yeah, so like something I'm definitely going to start with him. So I think every kid's different, but I definitely feel like 16, I don't think you want to wait until college, because if they've already left the nest, like it's probably too late.
Mhm.
And me as a personal example, like my parents didn't have that talk with me at all. Actually, the talk my dad had with me was, I told him I wanted a new TV. This is when flat screen TVs like were new. And it's like, man, I really want one of these flat screen TVs. It's like, oh, you should open up a credit card. You go get one because they got 0% financing. That's what he told me to do.
Oh.
I did not listen. Actually, I did. I was going to. Then my now wife was like, wait, we can't afford that. You can't afford that. You still have like credit card debt. How are you going to add on more debt? I'm like, yeah, but it's 0%. Like, it's like, yeah, you still got to pay for that.
Okay. Well, Debbie, another Debbie here is saying my 13-year-old is asking about investing in Bitcoin. That might be going a little too far, a little fast, but that's just my opinion.
And I would have, so once again, full disclaimer, I do own Bitcoin. I was anti-Bitcoin for a number of years and finally started investing, I think about over 2 years ago. So you can buy Bitcoin in Robinhood. So you can open up a Robinhood account, put in $10 and buy a very, very small fraction of Bitcoin. So don't think that you have to have 55,000, whatever it is, today to buy Bitcoin. To me, I think, and for those that maybe were following the news, like when the GameStop, call it debacle, was going on, that might be over what we're talking about here, but that was also a big thing where people were pouring a lot of money into, and that was gambling. So what I like about investing Bitcoin or any high risk stock, if it's $50 or $100, I'd rather them pay tuition on $100 than when they get to the point where they actually have real money to invest. They haven't had that life lesson yet, and they put in $1,000 or $2,000, and then all of a sudden, 3 months later, it's gone. So I actually don't think it's a horrible idea to have them start investing into something like Bitcoin, or any. Tesla has also been a very popular stock for obvious reasons. But yeah, I opened up an account a couple of years ago and had my kids pick some stocks, and I haven't had a good follow-up lesson with this yet, but it was a good conversation of looking at companies and then understanding, well, which ones could they buy, and just start thinking about like, well, what are some companies that we use? And my oldest son, we don't have a Tesla, but he picked Tesla because he just actually at the time, Daddy kept talking about a Tesla, but they picked Walmart and Amazon and Nike and Under Armour. I think of the one, Google, Facebook, so these were just companies that they were aware of.
Right.
So it made them just kind of like look around the house and think about the different services and products that we buy. So there's also like another fun life lesson there as well.
So one last question. Somebody's asking, what's your opinion or advice? Do you think a student has to have a job before getting a credit card?
I think that they should have some sort of income, whether that be like a W-2 employee or they're mowing lawns or landscaping or something like that. They've shown the ability where they're going out and making some money on their own. I think that's important. Otherwise, unless, I mean, you could give them an allowance. I know like we actually took the allowance away, but with us, it's, they have things they have to do, and we're considering like dishes and laundry and cleaning up and stuff. But, we're thinking about adding some additional duties for them where they can earn some money. But, once again, they have to do certain tasks to get these. So I think there has to be some sort of income, some way, somehow. Like I wouldn't do it if it's just an allowance and they're not doing it they're just getting money just to get it.
Well, and along the same lines, let's hope that, your student is earning some form of money. Do you have any opinions about of what they're earning? How much should they save and how much should they be allowed to use, for spending purposes?
Yeah, I think there's a couple rules of thumb. You could do like an 80-10-10. You could do a 70-15-15. So if you pay them $100, they're allowed to spend 70 of it. 15 of it would go into or you do 10 into give 15, or however you want to do it, essentially. But if you just want to do it 2 buckets, 80% spend, 20% save.
Okay, great. Well, you know what? There were actually, we're a little bit over our hour, and there were a ton more questions about investing, which again, probably seemed like a whole separate conversation. So I only didn't ask them. I'm not ignoring you, but they're probably a little bit more in depth of what we're going to get into tonight. But it's nice to see what their interest is, so we can kind of gauge,
Yeah, there are a lot of questions. Like, I would answer this. If they are a minor, there has to be a custodian. So basically an adult on the account. So they have to be at least 18. That's all that I asked a few times. So there has to be an adult that would sign for them. And that's the short answer, just so they can't go open it on their own. You got to be there with them.
Right. Well, thank you, Jeff. Thank you, everybody else who came to listen tonight. I mean, this to me is the start of, learning. Hopefully, as adults, we might hopefully know most of this, but learning, how we can help our students build these skills. And really, our ultimate goal, right, is that they get a good education, that they get a good job, and that they're financially independent. So everything that we're doing is, working towards that final goal. So thank you, everybody. Thank you, Jeff. This is recorded, and look for a link tomorrow. And I'm sure everybody who couldn't make it will also get a link, but they won't even know that because they're not listening. But thank you, everybody.
Thank you,
Jeff, so much.
Yes.
Take care. Bye.
Bye. Good night.